Heading into the holiday weekend, FDA Chief Dr. Stephen Hahn tweeted a reminder to Americans, writing in part, quote, "The coronavirus is not yet contained." Compare that important warning to President Trump's tweet from yesterday, quote, "Cases, numbers, and deaths are all going down all over the country." President Trump also tweeted about reopening schools in the country, most of which have been closed since March as a result of the pandemic. Shortly before Trump tweeted, Fox News host Steve Hilton was talking about the topic, urging schools to reopen. Quote, "Reopen now before you do even more needless damage." He said wearing masks were fine, but compulsory temperature checks were unscientific nonsense and totally pointless. And social distancing rules were over-prescriptive and arbitrary. Later that evening, Trump tweeted, "Schools in our country should be opened ASAP. Much very good information now available."
Very good information.
English
now.
Much?
So, Jonathan Lemire, this reminds me, obviously the FDA is right. While some of the cases are going down and we're bending the curve, obviously, there are concerns that health officials have across the rest of the country. The head of the FDA, who has been right more often than not during this crisis, has said it's not contained yet. Donald Trump, of course, goes out and then undercuts that, which he often undercuts doctors and scientists in his own administration. But again, this magical thinking continues from Donald Trump. I'm not exactly sure why. It reminds me of when Kudlow said back in the end of February that we had the pandemic contained. That was before 100,000 Americans, nearly 100,000 Americans died. Of course, Kellyanne Conway blasted a CBS reporter for suggesting the coronavirus was not contained. And again, the magical thinking continues. And I'm just curious, when the president is saying that the schools need to be reopened, when I think something like 75% of Americans with children in school say they would not send their kids back to school right now, I keep wondering, especially where this school thing comes from, because, again, if you look at the 1918 pandemic, rushing kids back to school ended up being a disastrous move. And I'm not talking about even for the fall, like they're talking about right now.
Jeez.
Right. This is yet the latest example of the tension between the magical thinking, as you say, and the science. The school thing was born out of a Fox News segment that he saw, and that he proceeded to then tweet about it. And you're right. First of all, a lot of school districts are already sort of closed for the year as it is, or they're heading that way, or they have a few weeks left. There are real concerns. Parents across the country, of course, want to know about summer camps with months ahead and school in the fall. But we've had Dr. Fauci, even in his testimony a few weeks ago, suggest that he wasn't sure he could endorse that yet. He didn't know that the nation would be ready for a full-fledged return to school even by the fall. It's simply too early to say. And as what we're seeing here is the president, again, undercutting his advisors, who are also not hearing from that much anymore. His medical team has been largely sidelined from public appearances. We saw Dr. Birx for the first time in the White House briefing room in nearly a month when she appeared there on Friday. Dr. Fauci had one media appearance last week, and at the time he said he acknowledged he hadn't been doing many. He said he hoped to do more, but we haven't seen him since. Those are now being controlled by the West Wing, whether or not these doctors are able to get out there and talk to the press. And part of that is the president has wanted them on the sidelines because he's wanted to shift the focus to the economy. He doesn't want to dwell on the public health crisis, except, of course, to engage in sort of that glass half full nature, promising a vaccine by the end of the year when most experts think that seems unlikely, and not wanting to dwell on the death total, and not wanting to dwell as a final point on what Dr. Birx said on Friday. We're still seeing disturbing cases in certain places, including in the Washington, D.C. area, which has not been able to bend the curve like they've wanted to see.
Yeah, you know, the thing that I don't understand, Mika, is that this magical thinking it's on videotape, and he continues it. And the predictions that he's making now will be, I mean, it's on tape for the fall. I mean, he's on tape in January saying that, you know, this is just one person coming in from China. Soon it'll be gone away. There's nothing to worry about. Then he's on tape at the end of February, even almost a month after Joe Biden and Peter Navarro, his own trade representative, warned that we weren't ready for this pandemic. Navarro saying 500,000 Americans could die from it. In March, he, you know, telling members of the Senate, you have Republicans, you have nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. He's asked by reporters in March if he's concerned. He said, no, I'm not concerned at all. We're doing a great job. And then you've got the FDA here saying it's still not contained. Scientifically, you look at it, yeah, things are getting better, but it's still not contained. Be careful out there. And the president, with his magical thinking, undercuts that. It's just like when the president talked about injecting disinfectants. The FDA had to come out and say, this is bad. Please don't do this. It's when the president kept talking about hydroxychloroquine. The FDA had to come out with warnings. I mean, again, the president, it would be great to just say the president was only hurting his own political prospects, but he's sending a really dangerous message to many Americans who listen to him, act on that bad advice, and then could quite possibly end up in the hospital.
Clearly a deadly message, a fatal message for those with vulnerabilities. Elise Jordan, again, leadership. You have families with small children. They're absolutely, you know, miserable. They want to get outside. They want to go to camp. They want to go to school. They want life to get back to normal. If you could talk about the need for clarity in terms of directives, because families that are, you know, on the edge and desperate to get out of lockdown will take, you know, any sign they can get to leave.
The problem is, Mika, it has just been so all over the place, the guidance that has been coming from the federal level. So governors have really had to step up and lead, and yet that's been all over the place. And you have, you know, within the limits of a certain state, the rules could be completely different if you cross over the border. And so I feel for parents who are desperately wanting to return to some semblance of normal life with their children, and to have their children be able to go and play with other kids and to do the kind of things that we like to see children do in the summer. But until this White House can step up to the plate and level with Americans about what should be permissible and about what's relatively safe, and giving some kind of framework for navigating this pandemic, it's just not going to be possible. And I understand why plenty of parents are probably erring to the side of extreme caution.
Well, and, you know, Eddie, of all the tweets that he put out this weekend, all the horrid tweets, the cruel tweets he put out this weekend, perhaps the most dangerous was the one we just showed, saying, hey, it's safe to get back in the water. Basically saying rates are going out, everything, you know, just cases, numbers, and deaths going down all over the country. As we move towards 100,000, we are bending the curve. But, of course, people in the Trump administration are still concerned about the outbreaks that are out there and the outbreaks that could come. Let me ask you about Princeton and the fall. I know every college, every university, every high school, middle school, elementary school, they're all approaching this in different ways. Right now, what does a prospect of fall classes look like for Princeton?
Well, Princeton is waiting to assess the matter. They know we're still developing therapies. They know a vaccine is really a year or two off down the line, and they want to make sure that they have testing regimes in place before they bring the students back to campus. So we won't know until mid-July whether or not we will actually have an on-campus fall semester. They're telling our faculty to prepare to teach online, but we're not sure yet. We won't know until mid-July. They're in some ways taking in the data in order to make an informed decision. But, Joe, when I read that tweet, it enrages me. I'm thinking about all the people that he's putting in danger, and then I'm reminded of what Dr. Fauci told us when we first started doing the press conferences around COVID-19. Remember, he said that we would see this lag, that even if we bent the curve, there would then be the death lag. The deaths would still rise. And so you have spikes happening in the South. Even though you see bending of curves in some places, we still haven't experienced the lag yet. And so I'm just wondering when this accumulated knowledge from what we've experienced up to now will then be brought to bear on how we respond to the current circumstances. Instead, we get this clamoring to open up the economy because Donald Trump is really interested in his political well-being. So as Princeton looks at the data to make a decision about when to bring kids back to campus, we need to be looking at the data and experience as we try to open up our economy. It just seems only right to me.
And, you know, Mika, the economy is reopening. But whether you're talking about opening up a restaurant or getting back into the churches or the synagogues or the mosques, we just have to do it safely. We have to socially distance. And yes, people, if they want to be safe, should wear masks. If they want to keep other people around them safe, they should wear masks. And what has concerned me from the beginning is that, yes, New York City went through absolute hell. They bore the brunt of this. I'm concerned, though, about, where I grew up, all the places I grew up in the Central Time Zone. I'm concerned about rural America. The hospital system has been defunded over the past decade, and a lot of those hospitals can't face the influx of COVID-19 cases. So it's so critical. Everybody's looked at New York City and everybody's looked at Washington and everybody's looked at Chicago and New Orleans. It is so critical that people in rural America, in the Central Time Zone, in other places that maybe we haven't heard as much about, that they're careful and they're safe as they go about their business, as they go to church, as they think about getting back to schools, because, again, rural health care has been gutted by the federal government over the past decade.
Up next, Tom Nichols joins us with his new provocative piece for The Atlantic entitled, Donald Trump, the most unmanly president. Tom will explain that ahead. Stay with us.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.